All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone. It's a great honor to be here. Having done my graduate work just across the road, I do have to pinch myself often to realize how far we have come as a team. Very excited to tell you about what we're doing today, but more importantly, about where we're going. We've made some big decisions over the last couple of months, and very excited to talk to you about what's next for NeuraSignal. But first, I want to start out on where we are. We are a fully automated ultrasound platform for cerebral blood flow assessments. We are commercial in the US and Canada today with around 130 systems placed throughout those two geographies. And we have built out an extensive IP portfolio to really understand and capture the importance of cerebral blood flow to the tune of about 66 issued patents within the US, Canada, Europe, and around the world. So I'm going to tell you about our commercial placements today, but more importantly, I want to walk you through what's next for the company and the opportunities that originally just started again across the street at Reagan and now have expanded across the world. So today, commercially, we're focused on a condition that we're all very familiar with and we all had at some point, which is a hole between the upper chambers of our heart, which is known as a PFO. In a vast majority of us, this closes when we're born, but in 25% of us, it doesn't. That hole in the heart is actually a major contributor to stroke risk as you get older. And it turns out that the best way to look for a hole in the heart isn't to actually look at the hole in the heart, it's actually to look at the brain. So we've developed a platform and over the last several years put out a substantial amount of clinical and economic data that shows that our automated platform that you see here, the NG2 platform, is the best way to diagnose that hole in the heart. Once it's diagnosed, it can be closed, leading to better outcomes not only for the patients, but better economic outcomes for the physicians and the hospitals themselves. So we've dedicated a lot of work and years of our lives to building out the clinical data through prospective trials, the economic data through established reimbursement, as well as spending a lot of time, which is often overlooked as an early stage entrepreneur in the workflow integration. You really need to have an aspect that integrates well within the workflows of these very busy healthcare professionals. And then finally, unlocking that ultimate therapy, which is what we want to get to as a diagnostic technology, is providing that therapy for those patients that ultimately leads to dramatic decreases in stroke risk. Today, from a business model perspective, because no pitch would be complete without a business model, we are a capital equipment company. We sell a fully automated ultrasound system for around $200,000. It gives us good gross margins, but there are a number of recurring revenue streams. Again, we are commercializing that in the US and Canada today, and we'll probably expand geographies as we gain market share within the US and Canada. These are a few of our placements across the geography, really focused on where our sales reps are in the Northeast, Texas, and in California. So looking forward to, over the next several years, continuing to expand our commercial footprint, which leads to a number of economic benefits for the company and for our investors. But really what I wanted to talk about today is what's next for us. Very proud of what the team's been able to do in expanding our diagnostic footprint, growing revenues, gross margins. But really, the course of stroke treatment has really changed over the last 10 years, and especially over the last few years, that has really opened up opportunities for us in automated cerebral vascular ultrasound. So although I've spent most of my career in stroke, it was shocking to me to know that despite world-changing technologies that came out in 2015, there's really only two stroke treatments today, whether that's a drug to dissolve the clot or mechanical thrombectomy or aspiration to go up and suck the clot out or grab the clot. Turns out that a vast majority of patients do not receive either of those treatments. And this isn't just in world-changing centers like UCLA, but is across the world. So the fact that a vast majority of patients, over 80%, do not receive these treatments was really eye-opening to me at the time and really set us on a completely different path for the next stage of the company. So it turns out that if you look at the literature, one of the things that's very easy to do is use ultrasound to break up clots, to help agitate those clots and break them up. What was missing was an automated system to do it. So there's extensive animal data and human data that has shown that the use of ultrasound can actually break these clots up, but it was all handheld. What we have done is we've actually developed a system to fully map the cerebral vasculature, allowing us now to target those clots. So really leveraging the work that had been done for the last several decades, but adding our automated technology to really provide another treatment option for physicians, not to replace EVT or IVT, but really to answer a solution that they don't have, which is what do we do with the patients that don't fit those criteria for either? So what we're doing is we're actually modifying our current system. Our current hardware can be used because what we're very good at today, we've collected, as I said, 130 systems in the field and growing quarter by quarter. We've collected around 15,000 patients and around 200,000 real-world measurements. So this data is all valuable from the standpoint of being able to target the different vessels in your head. So this is something that we're very good at. And now the next stage of the company is, instead of looking at the healthy vessel to diagnose something, is we're looking at the unhealthy region to break up those clots. So we're very excited about that opportunity, as well as taking the existing hardware that we've developed and modifying that for greater scale, whether that's manufacturability, COGS, and serviceability as well. So when you start to think about stroke and the next steps for the company, we're in hospitals today. We have expanded into private neurology clinics because of the opportunities to treat these patients in an automated way in an easy setting for the clinicians. But when you start to think about where this can be deployed, over the last year, we've deployed in ambulances within Europe to really target all aspects of that stroke pathway. If you think forward on what stroke treatment should look like in the next several years, it's about treating those patients throughout their journey, from initial diagnosis all the way through being in the hospital. And this is something that we're commercially rolling out, given that we're already in hospitals across the US and Canada, as well as I mentioned in EMSs across Europe, is initially targeting those groups that have no other options. So these are people that come into the emergency room. They might be outside the window, or they might have some comorbidities that don't allow them to get either of those stroke treatments. Allowing for a non-invasive stroke treatment could dramatically increase their outcomes. And then you'll slowly expand that from those people that are ineligible to ultimately those centers that are transfer centers that don't have the ability to offer all the treatments available at, for example, a UCLA, and then ultimately transitioning that into the pre-hospital setting. So with that, we just wanted to end and highlight we're very proud of what we've done from the standpoint of growing the diagnostics. We've grown revenue now 6 quarters in a row, quarter over quarter. We did around $3.5 million of revenue in 2025 and should eclipse around $4.5 million of revenue this year with no sales team increases, and looking to kick off the clinical trial for the next version of our automated system, which leverages all the existing data that we have, probably around 2030, 2031. So thank you for your time.
I'm Shyam Natarajan. I'm co-founder and CEO of Avenda Health. I'm also an adjunct associate professor in neurology and bioengineering at UCLA. Robert and I have known each other for a long time, and I've known a lot of the other panelists for a while. So it's nice to see all of us about a decade ago in the lab working on ideas and then now seeing the fruits of our labor. But Avenda Health is really on a mission to transform cancer care. We are starting with prostate cancer, which is a huge unmet clinical need, affecting about 3 million men in the US today living with the disease, as well as 400,000 new diagnoses every single year. The challenge with this disease is that about a third to a half of patients who get treatment, whether they be surgery, radiation, or targeted ablative therapy, end up having cancer left behind. And a larger proportion end up ruining their quality of life. So if you're a patient and you're diagnosed with prostate cancer, the doctor says, hey, we can do nothing, we can remove the whole thing, or we can give you radiation. Sometimes the treatment is worse than the disease. And why is the reason for that? It's because imaging today and biopsy today, the standard of care diagnostic testing, really do a good job of finding that there is cancer in a patient, but they don't do a good job of finding that extent of the tumor. So when it comes time to treat, that cancer is left behind. So at Avenda Health, we've developed Unfold AI, which is essentially a new diagnostic and treatment decision platform that helps physicians, urologists, radiation oncologists, and surgeons identify that invisible extent of tumor so that they don't leave any cancer behind. And so compared on the left to what a urologist has today, which is conventional MRI, in the white, you have the outline of a prostate. Don't worry if you can't recognize it. Most urologists can't either. In the red is what a radiologist thought was where the prostate cancer was. When that is positive by a biopsy, a urologist has to determine, do they treat just that red area? Do they treat that area plus a margin? Or typically, do they blindly remove half the prostate or the entire prostate? With Unfold AI, we've trained a very, very large multimodal data set of imaging, biopsy pathology, biomarkers like PSA and clinical information to go from that blurry image to now the center panel, a 3D predictive map of where tumor extent is within and around the prostate. Importantly, this was built based on hundreds of thousands of biopsy samples on tens of thousands of patients, but it was validated with surgical pathology. So it is not generative AI, it's conventional deep learning, but at the end of the day, we are very, very certain what we predict is actually where cancer is, going from 37% sensitivity with standard of care to 97% sensitivity with Unfold AI, now measured on over 2,000 patients. So really, this is a new superpower for physicians. This is a dramatically different way of delivering care, but still integrating with the care pathway. So what it is, it's a software as a medical device. This is unique because it is not a test that a physician orders from a lab, but actually a piece of software they have access to at their fingertips at all time. But it is FDA cleared with breakthrough device designation, and it is reimbursed. So now urologists are running software in a software test, but actually have a physician fee attached to it. And they're able to deliver this as a standalone, basically before a treatment decision is made. It's important because this platform is interactive. We're able to report out numerous clinically validated biomarkers, like what is the true volume of tumors? What is the chance of the tumor extends outside the prostate? So surgeons can decide, should they spare the nerves or not spare the nerves, to give that patient a chance of a good quality of life while still removing all the cancer. And we're also enabling a whole new class of therapy called focal therapy, essentially a male lumpectomy, where we can optimally place where a surgeon or a urologist should aim energy while maximizing the amount of tissue cancer treated, but minimizing the amount of tissue in off-target areas to be treated. And we've shown that with Unfold AI, we can improve the outcome, the actual clinical outcome of a patient from about 60% or 70% to over 90% with now 2-year biopsy follow-up. This is also impactful in clinical decision-making. Where it fits into the care pathway is really after a standard of care diagnostic testing, but before a treatment decision is made. This is a standalone test that a doctor runs when a biopsy comes back positive, and this is eligible for the vast majority of prostate cancer patients who have something that actually warrants intervention. And then with Unfold AI, they can actually have that live patient decision and patient interaction and actually pair it with a consult. Now, that information can then be used to guide therapy. We can actually use this 3D information to pair with ablative therapy, radiation therapy, and robotic surgery. And we've shown that in large-scale clinical studies in a multi-site way, that urologists are changing their decision of how to intervene with the patient in about a third of the cases and a third of the time. This is impactful because the largest decision shift we've seen is from doctors originally recommending whole gland or let's cut everything out and throw out the baby with the bathwater. Sorry, Mr. Smith, you're going to have to wear diapers for the rest of your life, to now ablative therapy, where they can get treatment in about less than a day and go home without any suffering of their quality of life. And so with this, we're able to showcase that this is a platform that has synergy between three key specialties, both radiology, urology, and radiation oncology. And we've actually developed a new CPT reimbursement code that has strong society support from all of these specialties. We're able to integrate with a number of other treatment platforms like focus ultrasound or radiation therapy, really bridging that gap between the diagnostic world of all of these tests, advanced imaging, PET imaging, etc., with treatments in the surgical theater. And so this is really the intelligence layer for urologists and surgeons to be able to leverage patient-specific information to deliver better outcomes. So where are we today? We're following the HeartFlow model for reimbursement. HeartFlow is another company, another AI company that has gotten a lot of press recently for a per-click AI test. We are one of 5 or 6 AI software as a medical device tests with reimbursement, period. So this is really a pioneering technology. We were FDA cleared in 2023 before ChatGPT launched. We spent the first year and a half really doing post-market clinical trials, showing superiority over standard of care in 4 large clinical publications in top-tier journals. We developed a new CPT code, reimbursement code, so that urologists and radiation oncologists can actually bill for the test. And unlike HeartFlow or some of these other AI companies that took 7 years and a very long time to develop reimbursement, we actually got national Medicare payment established in less than 18 months. And I'm proud to announce that after a limited launch last year, we just were assigned physician fee payment for the entire West Coast and Mountain West. So now we have started commercializing after a limited launch. To date, with Unfold AI, we've now treated about 2,000 patients. In Q1 of this year, we've basically grown revenues 60% month over month. We're about $5 million in contract annual recurring revenue. And we have a pipeline of about $10 to $15 million in the horizon over the next 12 to 18 months. So this, with Unfold AI, is a dramatically different way of delivering care, but still sits within the clinical care context. We're MedTech, software as a medical device, but with 80% or higher margins. I'm Shyam Natarajan, and I thank you for listening to my talk.
All right, thank you for having me. As mentioned, my name is Joe Rinehart. I'm an anesthesiologist and was at UCI from about 2008 until a few years ago when left full-time to run the company. I'm going to be talking to you today about Perceptive Medical and Barrelhawk. So I think anybody who's had contact with the healthcare system in any significant level is familiar with blood pressure. Physicians worry about blood pressure a lot because blood pressure drives outcomes. And I think a fairly common story for many of us is you have a relative that gets sick in some capacity. They enter the ICU due to illness or injury. Over time, due to that injury, blood pressure becomes low. And there's increasing focus on blood pressure, regardless of what else is going on. But despite interventions, maintenance of blood pressure is a struggle. And eventually that blood pressure itself starts to lead to secondary harms. Those secondary harms then increase the length of hospitalization. They can lead to things like heart attacks and kidney injury and other things that decrease quality of life down the road. So this is a problem that has a real personal toll, a real toll on patients. And part of the reason that this problem persists is not because physicians don't know, it's because we are limited in what we can do. And I'll get to that in a second. So just to talk a little bit about some of the numbers here, 75% of all ICU patients and a significant portion of operating room patients experience low blood pressure in unacceptable lengths of time and severity. There are over 300,000 cases of acute kidney injury every year attributable just to this low blood pressure, separate from everything else. Over 150,000 cases of myocardial injury every year. This is a real problem. And the problem persists because of how it's managed. Right now, if you are put on a medication to manage your blood pressure, the standard of care is a human provider, a bedside ICU nurse, an anesthesiologist, monitors the blood pressure, and then manually pushes buttons on a pump to raise the pump rate or lower the pump rate to fix the blood pressure. It's 2026. Our phones can talk to us and pretend they're our girlfriends if we want with ChatGPT. We can do better than this as clinicians. And so really what the BarrelHawk system is, it's a self-titrating infusion pump, but really what we're doing is process control. We are managing a process in the hospital that is currently inconsistently applied and inconsistently delivered because it's dependent on very busy human providers whose time is better spent not pushing buttons. So the BarrelHawk system monitors the patient independently, titrates the infusion precisely second to second, as opposed to every 20 minutes or half an hour. And as a result, we get much better outcomes. I'm going to skip ahead and just show you, this is the clinical data from one case that we've done. We've got over 150 human subjects to date. The red line is the patient blood pressure over 5 hours in an ICU. The first 2.5 hours of this management are what you get with the current standard of care. This is an ICU nurse, a very intelligent, motivated, highly trained provider doing the best she can to keep that blood pressure in that target zone. But she's got other stuff she's got to do. She's in and out of the room, and the patient is moving rapidly. So you get these big swings up, you get these big swings down. We turn on the BarrelHawk system in this study. The difference is immediately visually obvious. Second to second titration makes a huge difference in these patients. We avoid the lows, we avoid the peaks, and we do it delivering less medication. So we're getting a better outcome for less medication, less side effect profile, and keeping those patients out of those danger zones. Like I mentioned, I'm going to back up a slide. This is not just hypothetical. We've done about 7 clinical trials now, over 150 patients in Europe between the operating room and the intensive care unit. And our results are consistent. We can decrease hypotension exposure by 95% or more. We can really fix this problem, and that's exciting for us. What's also exciting is that the product itself, like I mentioned, is really a platform. We're doing process control. So we're starting with low blood pressure because that's the best medical evidence. But we can also do hypertension control, patients that are coming in with hypertensive emergency, strokes for some of our other patients that are having high blood pressure strokes and so on. We're building a platform that can deliver multiple medications. So we got a breakthrough device designation in 2023, which is exciting because as a class 3 device, this is a high bar to get through the FDA. We've got multiple rounds of pre-submission communication with the FDA now. And excitingly for us, we are now preparing for our clinical trial. Our major milestone in the last year that we got to, we have a working benchtop prototype now of our commercial device. All of our previous studies were done sort of using a Frankenstein lab equipment stuff over in Europe, using the same algorithm. Now we've taken that algorithm and housed it in our commercial device. So our commercial device, standard bedside sort of setup, we've got a monitoring system that can replicate a lot of the existing monitoring in advanced hemodynamic devices. So that's a little bit of our value add as well, that we're not just process control, but we're also providing existing information that you would have to pay separately for. And then we have a sterile tubing cassette. So for those of you who are running your own startups, you've got to think about revenue stream, whether you're going to go after a CPT code or something else. A disposable is one way to do that. So this is our gross margins on that. This is a big market. For hypotension alone, it's a $2.5 billion market. So there's a lot of opportunity here to make money. But I think the other important thing is the outcomes that we can affect. For hospitals themselves, under the bundled payments that most of these hospitals work for, to say nothing of systems like Kaiser that are all intrinsic, if you have a complication related to low blood pressure, the hospital itself pays for that. The patient pays for that down the road with the cost of the additional therapy, the additional treatment that they need. So we're reducing not only the direct cost to the hospital for paying for the device itself, because we can undercut some of our competitors that are doing, not competitors, but some of the existing products where we're duplicating their technologies. But we can reduce the long-term costs to the hospital, and we can also reduce the lengths of stay, get these patients out of the ICU faster and get them back home and healthy. Patents, we have a bunch of patents on all of this. That's not very exciting for this crowd. I'll talk about the team a little bit. Team building is really important. Team building is, I think having a good team around you is a really critical piece of this. So our FDA consultant is actually a former FDA member who worked at the agency, and things kind of work in cycles. My first company exited to Edwards Life Sciences in 2014. And the technology that company developed actually became the PhD thesis for Bahram while he was at FDA. And now he's left the agency and he's working with us again. So it's kind of like a nice union here that now he's working on something that he worked on before. Outside of that, Morgan McKeon is actually former Edwards Life Sciences global sales director. So nice industry insight and experience there to help run the team. And then Doug, our design engineer, has been doing this for 30 plus odd years. When you're building a physical device, it's important to have guys who have done it before. So you're building for manufacturability, sustainability. We were talking just earlier about finding out down the road how difficult it is to maintain something when it's in the field if it wasn't built for that. So all things to think about as you're building. Finally, we are raising money. We are excited. The next phase of the company is commercial study. And we've already seen how well the device works in all of our previous clinical studies. So really now it's doing these studies in the United States for the FDA. And so, down the road, if you have any interest or if this is something that might be of interest to you, we'd love to talk to you a little bit more about next steps for us as we engage with the FDA and start doing our clinical trials. So with that, I will say thank you. And I really appreciate the time teaching a little bit about what we're doing. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Always a pleasure to be back at UCLA. I've been faculty here for almost 20 years, and we incubated this program for 15 years before spinning off a few years ago with the support of UCLA. So thanks again for this. So this program started 15 years ago because I'm a retina surgeon. As retina surgeon, you obviously treat retina problem, but you also fix problem from colleagues, cataract surgeon problems, and you realize that there's a high variability in outcomes depending on who is doing the surgery. And I also mentored several fellows and realized over time that surgery is about three things. It's about vision, decision, and manipulation. And so we decided to build a platform which would elevate surgeon on those three main aspects of surgery, allowing every patient to get the same chance and not rely on who is holding the tools during the surgery. So vision, it's really important to obviously visualize all the anatomical structure during the surgery, and using different image modalities as we have developed for Polaris really allow Polaris and surgeon to detect every anatomical structure during the surgery. In terms of cognition, this platform will support surgeon in their decision process coming from millions of surgery gathered over time through this platform. And in terms of manipulation and dexterity, obviously, robotic arm are much better or much more precise than human hand. The surgeon's human hand is around 80 micron precision, while the robotic platform can reach just a few micron of precision. So when you combine those three parts within the Polaris platform, you can achieve much better outcomes. So we successfully completed the first Newman 6 months ago in El Salvador. We treated 10 patients. We did the full cataract surgery, so all the steps of the cataract surgery, no adverse events. So all the patients did really well after the surgery. I'm going to share with you a couple of videos. And what I wanted to share is we will provide the full spectrum of autonomy. We can have the surgeon performing the surgery through a Can I get the video, please? Is there a mouse to start the videos? So on the right side, you will see the video of the, can you start the video? Yeah. So vaginal micro, can you turn up the sound, please? So this is the first 5 patients we did the surgery using the control mode. So the platform is controlled by the surgeon through the surgical cockpit using different image modalities. You can see here the surgeon manipulating the input device, controlling the tool through the cockpit. We performed 5 patients like this, the whole cataract surgery So every single step very successfully, no adverse event. So then we did another 5 patient, but with what we call the supervised mode. So it's a full spectrum of autonomy where the system is actually using different image modalities, combining those image modalities in real time, generating a trajectory which is validated by the human surgeon, but then executed by the robotic platform, by Polaris. And these can really improve the outcome, but also the efficiency. So here's another patient, so using the supervised mode, and you can see here Polaris performing the lens extraction, but as you can see, no surgeon is actually sitting at the surgical cockpit. The system is generating a trajectory and then executing this trajectory, the lens extraction, under the human supervision. And so we can, using this supervised mode, improve the efficiency, improve even better the surgical outcomes. So what are the unmet needs? We are building a platform for all type of eye surgery, retina, glaucoma, cataract, but for cataract in particular, one of the unmet needs is the volume of patients to address. It's already 5 million patients every year in the US. It's the most frequently performed surgery across all surgical fields. Those numbers will double over the next 15, 20 years, and we don't have enough surgeons or nurses to address this demand. So that's number one. Number two is something I mentioned before, the high variability in outcomes depending on who manipulate the tools. And so there's still a high variability in outcomes in cataract with different type of complication, posterior capsule rupture, posterior capsular opacification, which have a high cost on patient. So we started with cataract. Again, this platform will address all type of eye surgery, but we started with cataract for a few reasons. Number one is the high volume surgical in the US, more than 5 million every year. It's a very uniform procedure, so it's pretty much all the time the same surgical steps, so it's perfect for robotic and automation, but there's a high variability in outcomes. There's a strong demand for innovation, and there's what we call the patient pay channel, allowing surgeons to upcharge for better technology to achieve better outcomes. So when you look at the 3 pillars of surgery I mentioned before, vision, cognition, dexterity, here Polaris will bring additional values. For vision, for instance, the top view is what surgeons view through the surgical microscope. So it's a top-down view. They don't see the lens, they don't see the capsule. In the bottom, you can see the multimodal imaging we have integrated in Polaris, combining cameras and OCTs, scanning the whole volume scan within the eye, detecting all the anatomical structures, such as the posterior capsule and other anatomical structures, which are critical to be seen during cataract surgery. In terms of cognition, same thing. Polaris will use in real time different image modalities which can be fused in real time and generate much more information for the surgeon. In terms of time reaction, this platform will allow 20 milliseconds time reaction where the human surgeon is about 200, 250 milliseconds. In terms of precision, as I mentioned before, robotic arm can achieve much better level of precision. So when you combine all this, you can really achieve better outcomes, reduce drastically the rate of complication. What we envision as well is better throughput. By providing this platform to surgery centers, we will eventually have one surgeon sitting in the OR somewhere in the hallway, using the surgical cockpit and supervising at the same time 3 or 4 rooms, allowing them to triple or quadruple the number of surgeries they will perform per day. So we use AI in many different ways. All the companies today use AI, but we use is embedded in the platform to improve for the image segmentation, to improve the trajectories performed during the surgery. But we also use AI to develop the platform and to accelerate the time to develop that technology. For instance, we use digital twin, where we have the robotic platform performing virtually thousands of surgery allowing the system to learn from those surgeries and improve trajectories, optimize trajectories down the road. And that will bring, as I mentioned before, better outcomes for the patient, better throughput for the surgery center and the surgeon. So we have a very strong team of engineers. We have a strong team of board members, advisors with decades of experience in medical device, ophthalmology, and robotic, allowing us to succeed. So we have a very strong IP portfolio covering all the different modules of the system, the visualization, the macro robotic arm, all the integrated platform. So very strong IP portfolio. For now, we did a seed round a couple of years ago. We closed the A round a year ago. We are finalizing the B round. We are targeting $100 million for the B round, which will allow us to get to the FDA submission within the next couple of years, and we'll launch this platform probably by early 29. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for taking the time to have this conversation. The conversation will be in 3 parts. We have a clock. All right. We actually have a good amount of time. The first part, to ground our conversation, I'm going to share a few words about each one of these CEOs. They spent a lot of time talking about their companies, but we'll focus on their journey to date, add a little color to their background. Quickly, I'll identify the objective for the conversation. Then we'll have a Q&A. Everybody ready? All right, let's do it. We'll start with Robert, the furthest on my left, your right. Robert is the CEO of NeuraSignal and a co-founder and former CSO for approximately a decade. He has 15 plus years in biomedical engineering, and he heads the strategic vision and commercialization of the AI-driven robotic transcranial Doppler ultrasound systems for cerebral hemodynamics. He directed the FDA-cleared NovaGuide platform deployment across 100 plus hospitals in the US, directed and EU and Canada, led $100+ million in funding, and holds 50+ patents in ultrasound signal processing and machine learning driven neurocritical care, period. Robert earned a PhD from UCLA, where he developed the core automated TCD technology through fieldwork in Malawi, Haiti, and China. He serves on the Gogio Family Foundation and UCLA Bioengineering Alumni Advisory Board. JP is the CEO of Horizon Surgical Systems. He's recently, as he mentioned, closed a Series A round and about to close a Series B. And as we learned recently, this technology is actually a spin-out of UCLA, developing a robotically assisted ophthalmic surgery platform. He has 30+ years of experience in vitreoretinal surgery across France, Spain, and the US. He served as a full professor of ophthalmology and affiliated faculty in bioengineering at UCLA and the Jules Stein Eye Institute. He led UCLA's robotic surgery research before founding Horizon Surgical Systems around 2020. He's board certified in France, Spain, and California, and was featured in OSINet's Interior Innovation Showcase and the Retinal Round podcast in 2025. Shyam Natarajan is the founder and CEO of Avenda Health. Shyam leads a clinical stage medtech company with a PhD in biomedical engineering from UCLA, and a former postdoc from UCLA and adjunct professor. He leads development of Unfold AI, an MRI ultrasound fusion platform for personalized prostate cancer mapping and focal laser therapy. He has secured National Cancer Institute grants won the MedTech Innovator pre-incorporation competition and closed the seed round in 2018. He's much farther along now with over 50 plus peer-reviewed publications and founded UCLA's Innovation Week and Invention. Last but not least, Joseph Rinehart, down there in Irvine. Joe is the founder and CEO of Perceptive Medical and a practicing anesthesiologist and associate professor at UCI School of Medicine. He's building BarrelHawk, a closed loop vasopressor system that automates blood pressure management in the OR and ICU. He's a serial medtech entrepreneur, having previously founded Ceronis, which was acquired by Edwards Life Sciences. Perceptive Medical was selected for MedTech Innovator in 2023, a common theme here. And Joe has authored over 50 publications in hemodynamic management and serves as a limited partner in the Code Fund down in Irvine. We have one main objective for today, and that is to hear the CEO's personal stories and give, to the extent they feel comfortable, the good and the bad at the various stages in their journey. So let us begin. And this is for each participant. Each of you has had to convert scientific credibility into the next meaningful milestone in your journey. Some of you have gone through many meaningful milestones. What was the single most consequential decision you made in that transition to the next meaningful milestone, and what would you have done differently? All right, all the way down at the end.
Oh, great question. And hats off to any entrepreneur out there. It's an incredible journey, fraught with difficult decisions across the whole spectrum. So, we were talking about it in the green room earlier. The decisions that we face up on the stage are no different than the decisions that you'll face early on as well. They're all difficult decisions. They're all important decisions. But as I look back, I could probably talk for an hour for the decisions I've made incorrectly that could have gone a different way. But, some of them that, one I'd like to highlight is this ability to go all in on an idea and realize that you're going to get feedback from the market. And so we had originally started the platform, in the previous entity as focused on traumatic brain injury and had done a lot of great work, great publications, hired our first commercial person, and they said, there's absolutely no market for this. There's no reimbursement. And he wrote a 3-page email, and we converted the company's direction in about 2 weeks. And looking back at that, it took a lot of it took a lot of effort, but a lot of conviction around this idea of completely abandoning everything you had done for years to convert to something based on new information. And so a lot of times entrepreneurs, especially founders, can get stuck in this mode of, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're not going to take any outside information. And so one of the advice I'd like to give to people is to take in as much information as you can, right? You're going to get conflicting information. You're going to get a wide variety of different perspectives, but we're able to take that information and decide to convert and change the company into Stroke at the time, which really saved our company. So there's a lot of stories like that, but that's one example of being able to synthesize information coming from a credible market, and then deciding to make a change and go all in on it.
Shyam?
Yeah, so I think for me, there's a couple of consequential decisions. One was, selecting my co-founder from, day one, who actually met at UCLA, but then she went into private, industry, and she was the first person I called, Dr. Burt Berry. That was consequential because we are still, very tight. We're still co-founding and leading the company today. And I think in medtech, it's like a 10-year journey. Somebody told me that when I first started, and I thought they were crazy. We had NIH grants, we had clinical data. No, 10 years. That's crazy. it's going to be a 10-year journey. But I'd say besides that, a very consequential decision we made in 2023. So one of our sort of founding, mission statements for Avenda Health was always do right by the patient. And, it's easy to say that, but it's harder to live it, especially when there are very consequential business decisions to be made. And when we started Avenda Health, we had sort of the vision or the concept of, mapping prostate cancer to treat in a targeted fashion and pairing it with actually a physical hardware device, a laser ablation device, to treat and deliver energy in a precise way, in and out in a doctor's office under an hour under local anesthesia. And the product worked. We got FDA clearance. We got breakthrough device designation. And then we started working on our AI mapping platform that paired with this ablation system. And we started seeing some really exciting data that we could help not only our own product, but also all other therapies available on the market. So for us, there was a really consequential decision in 2023, right around the time we got FDA clearance, we got significant physician excitement about it, is do we pivot away from being a hardware plus software company and abandon the ablation device that we spent 10 years of NIH-funded research and a great clinical outcomes in multiple clinical trials to becoming a software company to deliver potentially better care in a greater patient population. And so, always do right by the patient. It was a very, very difficult decision. I think me and my co-founders were crying at the time when we made it. But I think for us, we've been on a rocket ship ever since we became a software company.
So I actually, like all of these guys could probably list a dozen things, but I'm going to, based on Shyam, we actually made the opposite decision. When we launched the product out of UCI, really what we had was an algorithm and an idea for the platform. And when we started talking about building a company around that, one of the decisions we had to make was, do we try to partner with existing medtech companies that do infusions? Do we use on the market stuff, or do we build our own hardware platform? And, based on kind of some of our first companies' learnings and some market decisions and so on, we decided to go after hardware. Not necessarily for business reasons, there were some involved there too, but mostly because we could get it all correct that way. That for us, we're doing an infusion and using an existing pump could work, but the existing pumps have these drug libraries and lots of inbuilt safety things so that they aren't programmed incorrectly and so on. And we're really looking at having to overwrite or hijack some of that software. So instead, we decided to build it from the ground up, which means we can build a fit-for-purpose infusion device and make it safe for the patient-centric care, right? The downside to that is it is a much more expensive process now for us because we're building hardware that has to be validated and verified. Would we make the decision again? We would, because I think we're doing the right thing for the patient and for the platform, but it certainly was a consequential decision. So just to echo both of these guys, I think one of the things that every CEO in a medtech startup is you just learn to live with uncertainty. You're never certain you were making the right choice you just do the best you can with it. It's sort of a way of life.
So for me, I think that one of the main decision is when you spin off, should we do it or not? And sometimes we don't realize the challenges and don't realize what is needed to make it successful. And so I think that I realized down the road, even if when we decided to spin off, UCLA was very helpful in trying to help us understand the pathways, like regulatory and so on. I realized over time that you need to make sure that there is a regulatory pathway, that there is a reimbursement pathway, that there is a strong value proposition to surgeons and surgery centers and others to make sure that someone will spend the money and buy the technology you are developing. So even if you think that it's a great idea and so on, just make sure before you do it, before you spin off, that everything is kind of aligned. There is still a lot of things you will learn, a lot of challenges, and a lot of unknown. But I think that it's important to realize when you make that initial decision, if it's a viable and realistic pathway, because it's going to take years, a lot of money, a lot of challenges. So that's number one. Number two is when you decide to spin off, I think that being surrounded by people who've seen the movie before at every level within the company, board member, advisors, helping you making the right decision down the road, I think that it's really critical because you are learning on the fly and you have a vision, you have some ideas, you have some resilience, but some people have done it. And so being surrounded by those people will really help you reduce the number of mistakes and accelerate the progress.
JP, you made me think about this question that originally was for Robert, but I want to pose it to you and also you, Joe, and Robert, of course. Can you talk about when you made that transition from a scientist, researcher, professor at UCLA, UCI? Tell us what that was like. Was it a step function? You just took the hat off and put on the CEO hat? Was it gradual? Was there something that shook you that said, oh, I really need to be a CEO, and tell a CEO story? Can you tell me that story?
Okay, so can I start? Okay, so I was thinking about it for a few years because we've been incubating at UCLA for 10 years. So for 2 or 3 years, I was thinking, okay, should I do it? Not me, someone else. Should we do it? But the decision took a few years, but I did not realize even the day when I left UCLA, the challenges and so on. And the first year was very difficult because I was not prepared for that. I mean, I was like faculty surgeon, and I did not realize the challenge of raising money, of building a team, of making the right decision in terms of technology and so on. I mean, all those things were completely new. And it took me, so we spun off the company late 21. I left UCLA early 22. The first year, to be honest with you, I was miserable. I was thinking, why did I do this? I mean, I was like faculty. It was a great life, easy, doing surgeries. Everything was like fun. And I ended up with dealing with all those problems because you are just facing problems all the time. But after a year, I mean, where I learned very, very quickly, now I love it because I mean, I learn and it's still difficult. It's still super intense, but so it's really a journey.
Joe and then Robert. Yeah.
So similar but completely different somehow. So we started we spun the company out of UCI in 2018, and I stayed at UCI and ran the company wearing 2 hats for almost 7 years. And partially because it's secure. It's, you've got a nice secure job. Leaving the university is terrifying on a lot of levels. You're stepping away from something that's very safe for something that's very unknown. But it got to the point where I couldn't effectively wear both hats anymore. It was just too much. It was the day responsibilities versus running the company. So I either had to make the decision of, well, either I find somebody else to run the company and stay at the university, or I make the leap. And it was sort of a judgment call, but I was ready. I'd been at UCI for 15 years. I was ready to try something new. It was a shock. There was a lot of transition and figuring out the new job, but it was also really exciting. It was new challenges. After 15 years doing even a job in medicine, you get pretty good at the ins and outs. So similar in that it was definitely stressful, but I think I was more ready for that new nuance, I guess.
I mean, mine was comparatively easy compared to you guys. I mean, from the standpoint of leaving graduate school and in doing this was the passion, and I felt that was incredibly important to move forward and turning down other opportunities. But I just want to give a shout out to my other panel members because I've seen this, and this might be a somewhat controversial topic. You cannot have a full-time job and then run a company. hard stop. It can't happen. So to have people give up, lucrative, important careers to go run a company is a huge testament, I'm sure, to their investors and their employees to go and do that. I just wanted to highlight something that JP said. Being CEO sometimes can be glamorized, and it is problems every day, all the time. And so that is something that mentally I do think people need to wrap their heads around. It is a difficult, lonely position that, we're all surrounded by great teams, but they bring you problems that they can't solve. And that's important. That's why you're in this role. And it is something that you need to be prepared for. There are very high highs of raising money, helping patients, selling devices, and there are very low lows of having to lay off people and making difficult decisions about different directions of the company. So I don't think that should be missed in this conversation.
Shyam, I wanted to go to you because you've gotten through many significant milestones in your company's journey. Regulatory is kind of in the rearview mirror, but tell us about this reimbursement journey and where are you? Are the scabs fully healed? Are you still picking at some of them? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so a great question. So I just want to shout out to Paul Grand if he's in the audience, because when we started MedTech Innovator, I think when we first started the company, when we joined MedTech Innovator, the very first thing that we heard was, what is the value? What is the value? Think about reimbursement. Don't think about FDA. Reimbursement is really the thing that's the key to commercial success. And so it's been kind of a crazy journey in the sense that if you want to make an innovative medical device and an innovative product, by definition, you're doing something that isn't there, that you can point to. And yes, there are games and tricks you can play and, to like map onto an existing reimbursement code. And I can tell you, nobody understands how our healthcare insurance market works. Not a single person. And I've talked to some of the top regulatory reimbursement consultants. Doctors don't understand it. Billing departments don't understand it. Companies don't understand it. The best you can do is just try things out and pivot based on experience. But at the end of the day, the journey for us was applying for a new code. You really need to get society support. And so this is interesting. In FDA, it's all about the science. It's all about the clinical results. Lobbying societies is like a weird political job where you're armed with data, but then you have to convince a group of doctors to say that, hey, support my new application. And you also have to play block and tackle with the societies that could potentially be negatively impacted from your application, because we live in kind of a zero-sum, healthcare insurance world. And for us, again, before ChatGPT was launched, we were the first AI product that the Urology Society actually supported. And I think a lot of it boiled down to timing and luck. I think if we go with a new AI product today, there's going to be a lot of questions, a lot of scrutiny, and a lot of pushback. But we were at a place and a time, and I'll just end that, the best thing that any new medtech entrepreneur can do is really that lesson from, the software or the other tech world is, launch it, get doctors to use it, collect feedback, and iterate, because reimbursement is by and large that same ethos.
Thank you for opening the door and saying AI. So now we're going to step through the door. Tell us about something that's underappreciated. And Shyam, you already eloquently shared your view on what's underappreciated about selling a product with ML, AI, ML, some dimension there. Have you had to convince investors that you really do have an AI ML product, collect more data than you anticipated to train the model? What's something that a person wouldn't think about if they have AI ML in their solution?
Yeah. So first, you're not an AI company, you're a medtech company, and every medtech company has an AI angle. So that's the first thing. And every year it changes. Some years you talk to the big strategics and you're like AI and their eyes glaze over. The next year they're like, oh, you're AI? Let's do this. And then when it comes down to the brass tacks, like you bring it to the hospitals and they say, AI, what's that? Oh, good news. We just set up an AI committee yesterday. Why don't you go through it as your first thing? So I would say that, we're pendulum swinging back the other way. AI is not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but it's really about what are the patient outcomes. And I think that is the most important thing with any buzzword or any type of thing, is that how does your product impact patient outcomes? AI and all this stuff is just, bells and whistles.
I mean, I don't have much to add. It's true that all the companies now kind of use AI to develop their technology, integrate AI in their platform device. I think that in surgery, it will really transform how surgery will be performed and the outcomes and the efficiency. So I think that AI is bringing a huge value. But I agree with what Shyam was saying, that pretty much everybody has AI. We see the AI transforming our everyday life. So it's everywhere. It's like you are not kind of differentiating yourself or your company by using AI.
Joe, your technology and JP's technology, maybe you get the question when you're talking to investors, why now? An autonomous system, solving a problem that maybe is well known. Can you walk us through the story you tell investors or stakeholders for why now for your automated device?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question, because a lot of times one of the first questions investors ask is, nobody's done this? Why hasn't anybody done this? So inertia, I think, and timing controls so much of everything that happens. So just, my first company, and it's a weird cycle, but 15 years ago, I presented at the Society for Technology and Anesthesia. It was another autonomous system that we were developing. And the audience feedback was, these are the most technologically savvy nerds of the nerds of anesthesia. And I consider myself in good company among them. So, this said with love. They looked at it and they said, that's really cool. It'll probably work. Nobody's going to use it, blah, blah, blah. That was 15 years ago. And it's hard, I think, even now for us to appreciate how fast people have changed about AI and their vision of what's even possible. And so over the last 15 years, really seen the world evolve. And part of it is just, the constant AI we have in our pockets that we carry with us everywhere, the GPTs of the world. But the younger generation of the medical workforce too has, I think, changed their view about what should be happening in the hospital. Why aren't these systems working for us better? So whereas the older generations that I'm rapidly becoming a part of with every passing year, the older folks 15 years ago would look at this and say, yeah, they kind of bah humbug. Whereas the younger folks now coming into the workforce are looking at it like, why don't these systems help us? And so there's been a little bit of a generational change there. The other piece I think that has changed is the FDA. The FDA was very, very skeptical 15 years ago when we started talking about automation. But I think things like the artificial pancreas with insulin helped knock some of that down. And the reason that the artificial, the closed loop insulin controllers were so instrumental is that they were driven by patient advocacy. It was families of diabetics that were lobbying the FDA to allow these technologies. And finally, that wall started to crack. And now I think the FDA has become much more open to, I don't know what your guys' experience is, but it seems to me that the agency itself has opened up significantly. And so I think that's another sort of inertial force that has now become a tailwind and less of a headwind.
So for us, it's a little bit different. I would say that surgical robotic, Intuitive, and the Da Vinci platform kind of revolutionized 20 years ago the laparoscopic surgery. And several robotic platforms have been developed since then, but they were pretty much mimicking what the surgeon was doing. So it was scaling the motion, filtering the tremor, but it was not really changing or augmenting surgeon in other ways. Now with the layer of AI, on top of robotic, system can recognize anatomical information, can support the decision process, which was not the case before. And in ophthalmology, it's a little bit particular because it's a unique place where we have real-time imaging capability using cameras and OCTs. And the eyes, even if it's a soft tissue, it's still pretty stable during the surgeries. And so this is one of the unique place where we can actually automate surgery by using real-time image modalities, processing the information in real time, generating trajectories, and then executing those trajectories with the robotic arm. And that was not possible before. The AI over the last few years, I mean, in terms of hardware, the software and all the AI, I would say, ecosystem has really changed over the last few years and really enable now things which were not possible before. So for eye surgeon, robotic, which just scaled the motion at the time, was not enough in terms of value proposition. Now with the AI, the automation, all those assistants, it's really changing the game, and that will transform completely the way cataract, retina, glaucoma surgery will be performed. So ophthalmology is a very unique place which did not benefit from robotic for the last 20 years, but now everything will change.
And so is it fair to say, to some extent, because of Da Vinci and all the things you just said, the stability of the eye as a clinical environment, the wind is in your back, and the conversations with investors is more about congratulations on your first in human data. What do you need to fund the pivotal? Like, they get it. It's a foregone conclusion that this is going to be the next big thing.
So I would love that they would get it so easily. So we will close the B1 probably in 2 months. So some got it. Strategic gets it completely. They understand eye surgery really well, so they are full in. VCs as well. But they still, from the first Newman, what we demonstrated, it's possible. It's safe and it's possible, but we did not demonstrate efficiency. And in ophthalmology, everything's like around efficiency. So it's not just outcomes, it's efficiency. And now with the new platform, the commercial platform we are putting together, which will be integrated by the end of July, then we'll be able to demonstrate the efficiency, which is the missing piece today. So, yeah.
Okay. We do have some time apportioned. You know what? I think this may be a good time to see if there are any questions from the audience, because we do have a few moments and we've been talking for a while. Are there any insights, questions from the audience? Yes. I see a hand right here.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm Marcos Cordova from UCLA Computational Medicine. But, as a physician, in medical school, you get trained like to treat patients. How do you get the connections, like to transition from a physician to actually getting people to biodesign a device or use AI where you technically don't have much of that information as a clinician?
So just to clarify the question, how do you transition from the physician mindset to the corporate mindset? Is that really?
Get the connection.
And get the connections. How do you build your network? Yeah. I think I've been asked this question by other by residents and other people that want to do the same thing. And my advice is always just keep getting involved when you can. Use the time that you have. Volunteer to, so for me, I started working with some angel investors and just offered, hey, I'm a physician. If I can ever help you vet any of your deals, let me know. And I didn't necessarily know what I was doing, but I could look at the medicine at least and say, well, this seems like something that would be useful. But then you start to work with them, you learn from them, take advantage of those opportunities when you can and just keep pulling the strings. And they don't all work out. But you don't need them all to work out. You just need a few to get you kind of a little more experience, a little bit further along. And then that experience, I think, builds on itself.
I mean, for me, UCLA was a perfect network to connect with people in the engineering department, with colleagues. I mean, it's perfect. Everything is in the same place, right? And people are very open and willing to work with you and collaborate. So it was an amazing environment to start. And then when we decided to fund a company or start a company, I think that being connected with a few people who've done it in that field will give you all the other connection, and then you build on it. That's my experience.
Yeah, I totally got distracted, but you reminded me the accelerators and or the things like at UCI, it's Beal Applied Innovation, at UCLA, the equivalent. They're fantastic, and most of the people there really genuinely just want to be involved and help. And so, yeah, thank you. That's a great point.
More questions?
I could probably ask you in person, but I figured I'd ask for the benefit of the crowd. One of the issues that I deal with frequently in the startup support office is our early stage founders dealing with loneliness and insecurity. So how did you mitigate that in the first year, and how do you manage it?
I'll say probably ignorance is bliss when you're early on. But one, I think it was mentioned earlier, co-founders are really, really important, right? You're going to spend more time with your co-founder than your spouse, than your friends. So that's a really important early decision. I think it's an important point, especially with engineers and probably extends to physicians, but they feel that more information is needed in this case, and not to go against JP's point earlier about doing your due diligence on something, but investors do invest in risk. So there is this point where I've seen many companies fail to start, not because it wasn't a great idea or a great solution. It was because there wasn't that catalyst to get them moving. And so that does launch you into loneliness, but there is this reality that you want to surround yourselves, create your networks, and really once you have enough, take that leap, and you'll get feedback from the investor community quite quickly.
Now, I'll just echo that, but add that, I mean, unique experience like being a PhD grad school process, right? You're dealing with a lot of ambiguity. You have, a project, you have your advisor that has projects, and then you have collaborators which have projects that don't necessarily move the needle. So your job is to focus and figure out what is important, what is going to move the needle forward. And I would say that the early days of a startup are very similar. You have a million things that you need to do. You have a million things that you need to prove out. And it's a very ambiguous environment. And I would say that the best antidote for loneliness and for, again, just tinkering by yourself in the back is actually sort of antithetical of all the lessons that we learn in grad school. Is just, let's do the science, let's build it, and then kind of put it out there, is engage, talk to as many people as possible. I think I maybe interviewed 100 people in the first, couple of months. So Steve Blank has like a Lean Launchpad series where you interview 10 people every week and you change your business model or you update your business model every single week. It's a free course. I did that. I just did that because I needed to talk to people. I needed to get that external feedback. And that's the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur, is not necessarily listen to all of that external feedback, but listen to what people are saying and update and inform what you're actually doing.
Well, if you know Matthew even a little bit, he is an extremely organized person that starts and ends on time. So I'm going to model Matthew. We have 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Leave us with one key takeaway as we conclude. JP, my favorite Frenchman, you want to start?
Glad to know that I'm your favorite Frenchman. I think that I mentioned that before in the discussion. When you spin off or start a company, make sure that you are ready for it, because it's a long journey. It's not like a 2 or 3 years thing and it will be done. It takes always more time than expected. It's more difficult. So make sure that it's worth the effort, and try to assess. It's not also good to see all the challenges, because sometimes you may not, try to do it, but at least make sure that there's a path forward, and then be ready for the long journey. And it's fun. It's super intense, but it's fun.
Joseph.
Okay, so I'll add to what JP was saying. Dunning-Kruger is real, and you're never going to feel like you know what you're doing the way other people around you may look like. So just for example, JP is raising a $100 million round. I'm trying to raise 10. The me from 15 years ago would have been blown away that I was trying to raise $10 million, right? So there's always, it's like being at the gym. There's always somebody that's lifting more, running faster, but you're there doing your work and you're running your own race. So you know more than you think you do, I think would be the piece of advice.
Sure.
That's such great advice because just to add on to that in a different way, when you decide to start a company, you should start with a vision. What are you trying to accomplish? What is the impact that you want on patient care or patient lives? Don't go chasing trends. And this is really important, especially because this is a long 10-year journey in medtech, that you're going to hear, okay, AI, crypto, Bitcoin, whatever it is, right? Blockchain, right? Now agents, right? What are you trying to accomplish? What is the operative vision for what you're trying to do? And yeah, it's going to be harder to raise money, but the money that you raise will be real and patient and be aligned to your vision. So I would say, believe in yourself. Advice is advice, and you kind of know best, but talk to people, but kind of follow your own path.
I'll end quickly because we are over. An immense amount of gratitude for everyone on stage and everyone in the audience. Just because of all the work that you guys do, it inspires me. All the work that's being done in this field inspires, and that's really important to celebrate the wins. It is a long journey. Celebrate the wins you do have. It might be small. It might be release of one prototype. It might be positive feedback from the FDA. It might just be a good customer interview. You have to celebrate those because there are going to be, again, high highs and low lows.
So I'll conclude by thanking the panelists, Robert, Shyam, Joseph, and JP, LABEST, Matthew, of course, and I believe we are now released to lunch. Is that the next?